welcome back. Today we're gonna make another copycat recipe. And this one, it kind of evolved for me when I was living in Florida because they didn't have White Castle. Being from Indiana, White Castle's always been one of my favorite places, and I always will go there when I go back to visit. So in Florida, of course, they have the frozen ones. It's just not the same. So I gave this a try to replicate what I've always grown up eating, and it's pretty good. It turned out pretty good. So I think you'll like this one. Again, it's so much better than eating a frozen White Castle. Those are terrible. They're not even close to the real thing. So, you know, fortunately for me, they did actually open up a White Castle in Orlando. I believe they may have another location in Florida now. I'm not sure, but me being on the West Coast and the White Castle in Orlando being on the East Coast didn't really work for me. So this worked out perfect. And I've made this for several people and they've all fallen in love with this. So if you've got some time or you're not close to a White Castle, give it a try. I think you'll be surprised. And it doesn't take a whole lot of stuff. Takes a little bit of effort, but again, if you don't have a White Castle near you, it's worth it. So one of the first things, of course, is some ground chuck. I have 1.5 pounds that I grabbed at the Kroger deli. This will make about 24 sliders. It depends on how thin you roll out the meat, which, you know, we'll get to that in a little bit. But as anybody that's eaten White Castle, you know how thin the meat is. So you might be able to get a little bit more than 24 out of that, but 24 is a good guess. And then slider buns, based on how many you want to end up with. I have a pack of 12 here. You'd need a couple of these to cover all of the ground beef. And then again, sliced American cheese if you want cheeseburgers. If you don't, you can skip it. And then hamburger sliced pickles to make it authentic. Again, not necessary, whatever you prefer. And to our ground beef, to actually get the White Castle taste, we're gonna add 1 packet of the Lipton onion soup mix, a 1/3 cup of just plain breadcrumbs. We'll need 1 large egg, and then we're also gonna need just 2 tablespoons of water, a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. Now that goes into the hamburger mixture. Another thing that White Castle does that most people know, they fry the meat on a bed of onion. Since we're baking this, and yes, we are baking this, trust me, it still turns out really good. We're gonna make our own onion mixture. And actually, I'm gonna soak some of the minced onion here in a little bit of beef broth. And then we'll fry that in a frying pan, and then we will steam our buns on top of that. Yeah, makes it really good. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll need a big mixing bowl to mix everything together. All right, so I've got my ground beef in my mixing bowl. Now we'll go ahead and add the other ingredients. A 1/3 cup of the breadcrumbs. Go ahead and get that put in there. 1 package of the Lipton onion soup mix. As 2 tablespoons of water. And also a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. And then we'll add our large egg. I like to beat it up a little bit just to break it up before I put it in there. And then that's it for the meat mixture. So we'll go ahead and get this mixed in, and then we will roll it out on our baking sheet. I prefer to mix it by hand. Totally up to you. It just doesn't seem to get mixed in as good with a spoon. And I've got it all incorporated. And then also want to make sure that your oven is preheated to 400 degrees. And then we'll go ahead and get a parchment lined baking sheet, and then we'll get this rolled out. We'll get it as thin as we can to match what White Castle does. my baking sheet probably looks a little bit large to you. It's just what I grabbed out, so definitely don't need to have one quite this big, but hey, it was convenient for me. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and press this out. Yes, it is easier to do it by hand, even though it's very messy. But to go ahead and press this out to get it as thin as a White Castle, which is pretty thin. Because again, this should make about 24 sliders. And I try to get it in a square or a rectangle shape, because once we bake this, we will just use a pizza cutter to make slider squares. And this will, because it is ground chuck, when we go to put it in the oven to bake it, it will shrink up quite a bit, you'll notice. Because there is obviously more fat in ground chuck, but it has a better flavor, especially for burgers. Working it around until you think you've got it to the right thickness that you're going to prefer. A little bit goes a long way when you're making it this thin. Don't skip the parchment paper either. Make it so thin it will just stick to your pan, and don't waste your time. So definitely make sure that you've got the parchment underneath. Now I think that's looking pretty good, which I'll have to pick it up and show you after I wash my hands. All right, so as you can see, that is pretty thin. We'll go ahead and put this in our 400-degree preheated oven. It's only gonna take about 10 minutes to cook, obviously, because it's very thin. Now, if you wanna be authentic, they have little holes in their burger patties. If you're a fan, I'm sure you know that. I have tried doing that before, but to me, it just makes a little bit more of a mess than necessary. It doesn't change the flavor at all. So I just leave it like this, and then, like I said, we'll cut it with a pizza cutter into squares. So let's go ahead and get this baking. While our White Castles are baking in the oven, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a beef bouillon cube. We're gonna use about 8 ounces of water, and we're gonna heat that up in the microwave. Obviously, be careful anytime you microwave water when you're getting that out, because it's easy to get burned. So what we're gonna do with our hot water is dissolve our beef bouillon cube, and then we're gonna soak some of the minced onion in that while our hamburger is baking. Got my hot water here. I'm gonna drop this in and we'll get this dissolved. I'm gonna add some of the minced onion. There's no measurement, just I'm gonna pour some in. Let it soak, soften up. Once it starts to feel like it's softening, we can go ahead and drain it. All right, so those are looking pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna drain these. I'm gonna get that water out of there. Then we'll go ahead and put these in our frying pan. So I added a little bit of olive oil to my pan. We're just gonna go ahead and cook these onions a little bit, get them a little bit softer. They soaked up some of that beef flavor. Just make sure you don't turn the heat up too high on these. We don't want them to get burnt. We just really want them to get softened up a little bit. Of course, you can use, fresh onion as well. I've done both. I've got several of them steaming on top of the onions. Just gets a little bit of that oniony flavor soaking into the buns. Got our buns sitting aside here with the onion. I'm about to take the meat out of the oven. It's been about 10 minutes, and we'll get that cut into squares. I'm gonna get this cut into squares, and then we'll add it to our buns and show you the final product. All right, so I got them all cut into squares. I've got a couple here on my plate. We'll go ahead, and I like the cheeseburger, so I'm gonna add a little bit of American cheese. And we'll put that pickle on there if you wanna be authentic. Then we'll add our warm steamed rolls. And there you have it. It sits there a few minutes. It'll let that cheese melt on there, which will make a difference. As far as for the slider buns, I like to get the Hawaiian rolls. I just think they have a better taste. Totally up to you, but that is a good option if you do like the hint of sweetness in the slider buns. So looking pretty good, smells pretty good. We're gonna give it a taste. So much better than a frozen White Castle. That's a keeper. So if you don't like the frozen and you're not close to a White Castle, give this recipe a try. It's not that difficult, and trust me, it's worth it. Hope you like our videos. We're doing new copycat videos all the time, so don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss anything. Thanks for watching.